So it wasn't until I got to college and walked in to my dorm room with everyone's family there. Oh, hi, where's your parents? Home. So that was the real reality check. I didn't know that what was going on in my household wasn't normal, because I didn't know anybody else that had alcoholic parents, or at least wasn't aware of it at the time.
Hey guys, welcome to this week's episode of Young and Sober. I am very excited for the episode that we have in store for you today. Today we are sitting down with Casey Conrad. She is an author and has been in the health industry for quite a long time. And I read a little bit of her book, Bitter or Better, which is about turning pain into power. And it was a very incredible memoir about your relationship with your mom and what it was like growing up with an alcoholic mother and how that impacted the rest of her life. Want to go ahead and start with a little bit of your background, your story, what it was like growing up with your mom, how that started?
I had the idyllic life growing up until a certain age. My father was a surgeon. My mother was a nurse. They met in the hospital where his father was a surgeon, fell in love, got married, had 3 kids, a dog, a house, the picket fence, and everything was hunky-dory. And then when I was 12, one night my mother was at work, which was something new for me. She had been an at-home mom since I was born. I was the third. And my father made dinner for us. And while we were sitting at dinner, he said, after supper, I want you kids to go downstairs and get my suitcases because your mother and I are getting divorced. And I had literally never seen my parents fight, ever.
I'm sure that was
It was crazy.
a very jarring moment in your childhood.
It was very jarring because my illusionary world, right, because it was obviously an illusion, was completely shattered in an instant. And of course, now we're talking, I'm much older than you, right? I'm 61. So this is 1976.
Okay.
So first of all, divorce wasn't that common back then. And so it was like literally like a light switch was flipped. And I went from having this perfect mom home from the school bus with cookies and warm milk moment to my dad moves out, and now I discover why dad moved out. So
Was your mom able to hide her drinking from you pretty much for that whole time?
well, yeah, I mean, think of it. I was 12, and again, in a very different world. When you were 12 back then, you went to bed at 8 o'clock. So I never had seen my mother drunk. Not drunk. Of course, you see your parents back then, people, oh, it's 5 o'clock somewhere. That generation grew up drinking. And so I saw parties and things of that nature, but I never had seen either of my parents drunk. So once my dad was gone, then it was exposed. And my mother drank every night.
Did you see your siblings kind of start to step up as the adults of the house once your dad left?
No. My brother was already an alcoholic. Didn't know it. He was 16. He had a license at that point because you could be 15 and a half back then and get a car. My sister, the middle, she and my mom didn't have a great relationship. And so she would take off with her friends. And so that left me pretty much home alone with my mother. And I quickly, of course, I can look back at it now, but I took on the role of the enabler. So I would bring her to bed, get her upstairs, tuck her into bed. At 12, I had to drive home from a family party.
That's crazy.
With my grandparents driving behind me.
Just to make sure you got home safe.
You got home. Go get them, 12-year-old. So again, don't get me wrong. It's not like we were desolate in any way. So one hand, relatively normal. You got a house, you got a dog, you got food. So it's certainly nothing like a lot of people growing up in alcoholism deal with. But certainly for me, it was shattering moment that for the next, until I moved out, basically was the enabler.
How did your relationship with your mom impact your friendships when you were younger?
I had an interesting childhood in the sense that I was the first girl in Rhode Island to play boys' Little League. So I wasn't a real popular kid because the girls thought I was trying to play baseball to get the boys. And the boys that weren't my friends were pissed that a girl was playing baseball, right? So I had really two good guy friends. There was no girls my age in my neighborhood. And my sister was a really girly girl, and I was a total tomboy. And there was a limited number of people that came into my household as friends. That didn't really impact me until college.
Okay.
It wasn't until college that I realized how screwed up my life was. Not to ruin the whole story of the book, but like, if I didn't want to go to school after my dad left, I would just say, I don't want to go to school today. My mother would write a note. And it's, again, she wasn't a bad mother in the sense of there was nothing that we needed. I can justify this all I want, right?
Yeah.
So emotionally, there was, of course, lots of issues. I looked at colleges by myself, got in the car, looked at colleges. And I packed up and left for college by myself. So it wasn't until I got to college and walked in to my dorm room with everyone's family there. Oh, hi, where's your parents? Home. So that was the real reality check. I didn't know that what was going on in my household wasn't normal, because I didn't know anybody else that had alcoholic parents, or at least wasn't aware of it at the time. So when I got to college, I only brought someone home once, and it was a shit show. I got home, this is long before cell phones, and my mom knew that I was coming home. Back then, you got in a phone booth and you made a 5-minute phone call home to say, I'm going to come home this weekend. It was only 2.5-hour drive away, so it wasn't too far.
Yeah.
And so I brought a couple of my dorm mates home. And when we got there, my mother wasn't home. Being young, I was like, well, hey, let's go out for a pizza. Well, I didn't know my mother had gone to the grocery store to buy things. And by the time we got back from going out for pizza, she was completely shit-faced in bed. You can see the gist of it. So I never, ever brought another friend home from college again, because I didn't want to have to deal with
the impacts of her drinking.
Exactly.
Was she an angry drunk?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you were pretty much alone growing up, and then your mom was a drunk. What did you do emotionally? If you needed someone to talk to, what was your coping mechanism there?
I didn't. Really, my coping mechanism was push it down. And as a result, I was an angry kid. I was the kind of kid, if I was losing a game, the board would go flying across the room. I remember my best friend and I, we had badminton championships in our neighborhood, and we called our team the sore losers because I broke so many rackets. So I was, and I didn't know this, right? This is just the way it was. And it was suppressed anger, suppressed emotions. I know you didn't grow up in an alcoholic family per se, but when you grow up in an alcoholic family, you don't ever talk about it. There's the drama at night, and the next morning it's, good morning.
And my mom's household was very similar growing up, so we talked about that a lot throughout my sobriety now, about what it was like growing up with alcoholic parents.
It wasn't until years later that, when I started therapy, right, that I realized that I was suppressing emotions, and that was eating me alive inside. So I had to learn how to communicate. I had to learn how to express my feelings and not feel as though there was going to be a repercussion for it.
That's a big one.
It's a big one.
It was probably one of the hardest things for me to realize, is that I can express myself and still be safe.
Yes.
So your mom had all this alcohol in the house when you were younger, and when we had talked, you told me that you never drank.
I've never had a drop of alcohol, never had a drug, never had a coffee, never had, who knows?
How did you do that?
It wasn't, I can't tell you that it was a conscious choice. It had to have been unconscious, because we had unbelievable parties at my house, kids' parties. I mean, my house, my brother, who of course was drinking again, was an alcoholic by the time he was 16, we'd have 100 kids at our house with a keg party. Then this was, again, long before there was the types of controls that there are now. My sister had huge parties. I'd have a party with the band. I was a bit of a geek. It was in front of me at all time. I had access to it. There was a massive bar in our living room, and I must have just at an early age recognized and made the association that, that stuff ain't so good, because I could see this Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, because my mother was a kind, super intelligent woman. But man, when she was drunk, she was a bitch.
It's crazy an alcoholic sitting across from a child of alcoholism. And like the thought of being in front of alcohol and not drinking it, like, does not correlate in my brain whatsoever. Your brain was like, yeah, it's probably not a good idea. I should probably stay away from it.
But look at my brother, the oldest.
Yeah.
He was, by 12, he was going to school lit up. He would water down the vodka. Neither of my parents drank vodka, but there was vodka in the bar. And yet my sisters never touched a drop of alcohol. So we're all 2 years apart.
Okay.
So
you and your sister are both sober.
Yep.
And your brothers.
He's a completely, reformed alcoholic. Yeah. He's been sober for, I think this year will be 38 years. He was also a cocaine addict.
Okay. Me too.
Yeah.
That one's a brutal one. So as you got older, you realized that you're a pretty angry person. When did you start to address that? Was it after college, during college?
During college. Okay. So I went away to college, and that was another like wake up moment for me. Like, wow, families are involved in their kids' life, right? I mean, I was an athlete all through high school. My parents didn't come to my games. It's not, oh, woe is me, poor Casey. No, that was just the way it was. I'd get on my bicycle, go to my games. Once I got my license, I got my own car. So the other piece of college was when everybody was leaving their kids off at school, they all said, I love you. And I had never heard that from either of my parents. I was 17 when I went to college. So there was a lot of shit to work through.
Really quick, when your dad left,
yep,
he never came back in the picture? He just kind of disappeared?
No,
or did you have
we lived in a small town. My dad was a very well-known surgeon in a small town. And back then, the mother always got custody. Yeah. The mother always got the house. But my dad was a workaholic. And he was in surgery or in the ER. So we had scheduled visits with him. But of course, my mother totally contaminated us to him. He's an asshole. There was a time where I didn't see my dad for a year, and we lived in the same town. Wow. But it was because my mother was creating the tension between us and literally brainwashing us that, because my father had cheated on her. Now, okay, he cheated. There's nothing acceptable for that. But she was an alcoholic. It takes two in any relationship, right? So I don't pass any judgment on any of that.
Two sides to every coin.
There's two sides to every coin. There's actually three, right? Because there's the rim, and that's the truth, right? That's the reality. So within probably 6 months of being away at college, I started some therapy. And then later I ended up getting into ACOA, Adult Children of Alcoholics, and then doubled up my therapy. Like, I am fucked up. I need some serious help.
I really need help.
Yeah, sorry, the language.
Throughout your brother and seeing your mom, you start to realize that alcoholism may be genetic as well as environmental. I think that I'm a firm believer that it can be either or. How did the gene show up in other ways?
Yeah, I'm a complete and total obsessive compulsive workaholic. I just chose a different drug in this lifetime. I have destroyed in my youthful years, I have destroyed so many relationships with men because I chose work over them, and I was guarded. Truthfully, even with all the therapy, Sydney, I don't think I became completely emotionally available in an intimate way until 40s, late 30s, early 40s. Yeah. Because you're always thinking that there's a condition behind it, right? When I grew up, my mom would get completely shit-faced. I'd have to get her upstairs. She wouldn't obviously remember it, but I'd come home from school, there'd be a gift on the bed. So there's always strings, and then it gets thrown back in your face when they're drunk. After all I do for you, I just bought you those pants. What? Okay, well, gee, you bought me the pants because you were feeling guilty. I didn't ask for the damn pants. And then it gets thrown back in your face. So what happens is, at least this is my experience, right? You become so incredibly independent. And this is still to this day, this is one of my biggest challenges. I'm not taking any help from you because I'm not owing you shit. So you become overly independent to the point where you don't let people into your inner circle. And I still, to this day, I know people all over the world. I've had an incredible profession. I have incredible friends all over the world. But I have a handful that I truly let into the inner circle.
It's really interesting hearing the impacts that an alcoholic has on someone versus being the alcoholic.
Yep.
The first chapter of your book, you're talking about your mom's last stages in her life.
Mm-hmm.
Did she ever have any point of real sobriety?
No.
Where it was treated alcoholism?
No. The only time, and I don't remember the exact year, maybe when I was 14, my sister, who took the brunt of my mother's alcoholism because of their relationship, she was really much more emotionally abusive with my sister. She was living her life through my sister. My mom had been a Miss Rhode Island. My mother was gorgeous, smart, and so my sister got into modeling. I had no interest in that. I was on the baseball field, right? And so my sister really...
That was like her second chance.
Yes,
was through your sister.
Exactly. And so when my sister, I don't think she really wanted to do those things, but she was doing them to, please my mom. What happened was she actually, after she graduated, maybe I was 16. Yes, because she was doing a trip across the country. She organized with my mother's brother, who's also an alcoholic, our grandfather, a great-grandfather, alcoholic, Irish descent, right? Yeah. So the genes are there in full living color. Anyway, she had talked to my uncle, and he agreed to pay for my mother's rehab. So this is maybe 1980. She was doing a cross-country trip, and she organized it so that my mom would come out to my uncle's, and then they'd drive back to Rhode Island. That was the story. And they got there, and they did an intervention, and my mother went off.
Oh, I'm sure that was not pretty.
It was not pretty. And that probably put the nail in the coffin for the relationship between my mother and my sister until very later in life. Never really repaired itself, even to this day after my mother's dead. But my mother came home and she was like, you ungrateful little shits, right? I'm going to show you I'm not an alcoholic. She stopped for 30 days. She says, I'll show you. I won't drink for 30 days. And she didn't. We were like, this is amazing. Like, we didn't think she could do that. The end of 30 days, we're out in the living room. She comes out to the bar, pours herself a scotch. Fuck you all.
Oh my gosh.
Yep. And
did your heart drop in that moment? Was it like a glimmer of hope and then it just shattered?
Completely. Because I was like, wow, maybe
what a
she
wicked
really
mind game that is.
Totally a mind game. So never again. Now, later, after college, she and I had a huge blow up. And for the first time in my life, I confronted her about it. And it didn't change, but it altered when she was around me. So if she came to my house, she and her husband carried a bar with them everywhere they went. Literally wouldn't go an hour drive without a bar in the car. No joke. But she would say, may I drink in your house? So she did become more aware. But then when she lived with me for the last 10 years of her life, then it was...
all bets were off the table.
Yeah, all bets were off the table at that point.
Did you find yourself becoming not only the enabler, but also just trying to be the peacekeeper? She was drunk, or were you just trying to keep her happy?
Yes. I only once really confronted my mother about that time, about her wicked, mean, brutal comments when she was drunk. she'd be downstairs in her apartment and she'd start getting nasty. Literally up until my father died, which was 4 years before her, and they'd been divorced for 40 years. My father's name was whispered. Oh, that asshole. It was crazy, Sydney. When we got to what I call the witching hour, she would start to get mean and nasty. And
Would you
I
just hide? Or
no,
just
I'd just stand up and say, you know what, Mom? I'm not going to listen to this. Good night. I love you. And I'd walk out.
How did you start to let go of that resentment of that time?
Because many years earlier, I went to Tony Robbins seminars when I was in my early 20s. And it completely and totally changed my life because the premise of this book came out of that. Tony Robbins made us take the things that we thought were the most horrible things that happened in our life and learn how to reframe them so that we recognize what made us the person we are today. And as long as we are better because of it, then thank you for that. I got to a place in my life where I recognized, you know what, if I didn't go through every single one of those experiences, I wouldn't be the person I am today. And my mission is to try to make the world a better place with what I do. And I love what I do. I've been so fortunate since the age of 25 to own my own business and do what I'm most passionate about. So that's how I just didn't allow it. And my spiritual practice as well.
Did you ever feel like your identity was being built not being like your mom?
Oh, absolutely.
How did you separate that? Like from becoming, I just don't want to be like my mom to I'm going to step into Casey and like who I am.
I think you get to a certain age and success in life where it's like when I was younger, I wanted to be successful to prove to everybody else that I could do it. Now I just do it because I want to do it. I want to help. Once you make a certain amount of money in your life, you're like, yeah, money doesn't give you happiness. That game no longer becomes the primary driver. And what becomes the primary driver is purpose.
Yeah.
And so I think I got to a certain tipping point in my life where I realized I'm not like my mother. So I don't need to live my life to not be like her, but just be Casey.
And earlier you were justifying some of this stuff that your mom had done. Like when we first started talking, how do you forgive and still hold compassion for your mom without excusing what happened to you when you were younger?
My spiritual belief is that we are souls having a human experience and that there is such a thing as reincarnation. So I believe that every experience that I have had and will continue to have in this lifetime, I asked for to make me a better person. I have a choice in this moment. I can become more godlike, meaning love, or I can become more devil-like or anti-love, right? Resentment, hate, bitterness, lust, greed, all of those things. When I was in India speaking, I took some time to actually vacation there. And one of the places that we stopped, there was this group of women that were like, when I say dirt poor, they didn't even have shoes. They were on their feet in a kind of a kid's crouched position, and they were sweeping the dirt off of the pathways. And like no teeth, they were smiling and hello. And I said to the guide, how are they smiling? They have nothing and they're sweeping dirt. And he says, Casey, this is the difference between Eastern and Western cultures. He says, these women look around and see people that are less fortunate than them, and they believe that they asked for this lifetime so that they can come back and in the next life have a better life. And they know that they have to go through this in order to develop spiritually. So I believe that. And so I look at everything and I say, well, I'm not going to resent that because you know what? That made me into the person that I am today. And quite frankly, I love myself. I love the person I've become. And I love my life, right? So it's not even in my vocabulary, resentment.
It gets to a point in recovery where there's a saying, you're either going to grow or you're going to go. And so it's like you have to break the cycle. So what are things that helped you break that cycle?
I think awareness, first of all. I mean, no one's going to start to recover. And when I say recover, remember, I was a holic. I wasn't an alcoholic. And with that holic label comes some very bad perspectives on life.
Like untreated alcoholism.
Absolutely, positively. I was an untreated alcoholic. I did not do the work for years. And until I did the work, I wasn't able to break it. So number one, awareness. I think awareness is absolutely the key. The second tool I think you need is, I think you have to have some kind of support system. You have to have someone that can check your reality. Because let's face it, it is so easy to blame others for the shit going on in your life.
And it's so easy to surround yourself with enablers.
That's right. And then, you're right, he did that to you, they're all ass. You have to be able to bring someone or an organization or a group or an individual into your life that can absolutely check you down and say, hello, how did you bring this upon yourself?
What was your part in this?
Exactly, because there's always a part. I don't care what, you think, oh, he started it. You can take it right down to your siblings. No, he started it. What you didn't say was that you poked him underneath the table, right? And it's the same thing as adults, right? There is a domino effect to our behavior that creates a reaction. My belief is that if you can go through the work, but ultimately come to a place where you feel, number one, that you're doing your purpose and your passion. You got to do your purpose and passion, or else you're going to go. Think about how many people, Sydney, go through life. Got to get up. Got to go work for the man. Gonna come home, pop a beer, sit down, watch it. Like, I don't even own a television. Right now, that doesn't mean that I don't watch media, right? I just have so many other better things that I can do with my days. So if you are not, number one, living your purpose and your passion, then you start to be like, I'm stuck here and I got to do this and I got to do that. You don't have to do anything. You are a free spirited person. You might have created that belief or that rule on yourself, right? I really do believe that we're put here on earth to have experiences that make us a better person, and you have a choice. You're either going to go better or you're going to go bitter, and you're either going to develop spiritually and have a greater impact on the world, or you're going to regress, be bitter, and you're going to come back again and again and again until you get it right. When my mom passed, and being there for somebody's last breath is extraordinary. And when it's the person that brought you into the world, no matter how much in that moment it was a relief because she was suffering, and it was pretty quick hospice. It was like 5 days.
Wow.
And it was her choice. She chose to come home instead of go to a nursing home, which was the greatest gift of all. She chose to not inconvenience me for another 6 months, 12 months. She chose death and convenience for me over life for her.
Do you think that was like her apology? Or was it just...
When we moved to Tennessee, she didn't want to move, but I had gotten the message from God that I needed to move. I didn't want to move. I was like, are you kidding me? I just opened a new business. I still have my mother, and I got to sell an office building and a house. And right, so it wasn't, I'd already had property in Tennessee with my sister for 10 years, but she didn't want to go when I told her about it. Yet I said, think about it, Mom. And I thought for sure she was going to shut it down. I don't know what I would have done if she hadn't agreed. But the next time I was downstairs, she said to me, I've thought about it, and I don't want to move to Tennessee. But it's not fair to you that I'm holding your life back. And that was November of 2020, and we moved in March of 2021, and she died in September of 2021. That all happened fairly quickly. So I think even if she maybe wasn't aware of that being a peace offering, she was conscious enough to know that she had already lived with me for almost 10 years and that I had made adjustments in my life for her. I'd do it all over again. I don't regret a single day. People say to me all the time, your mother's lived with you for 10 years. I'm like, yeah, don't be a little selfish prick. She did the first 18 of your life. You can't do the last 10 of hers?
I just think with the way that you grew up, maybe people will struggle. She took care of you, but there's so much more than just setting someone up to be able to survive. But she pretty much let you fend for herself, and yet you were still able to turn back around and take care of her for the last years of her life. I think there's something admirable about that. But that being said, you probably did a ton of work before.
I did years of therapy and years of personal development. It certainly wasn't easy. And then I had to do a lot of actual physical cleanses. As crazy as it sounds, my liver was so congested. I'd never had an alcoholic beverage in my life. And yet I had literal bowls of bile stones because all emotions go through the liver, which is why when you have the combination of anger and alcohol, it can be pretty devastating. As far as how I was able to not be resentful over it, I think it comes back to twofold. Number one, a belief that everything happens for a reason that serves you as in your lifetime. And number two, if you can find your purpose and your passion, that all that is rechanneled in another place. You want to make a difference.
Was writing bitter or better in a way, was it triggering or freeing?
Writing the book, I went through 4 boxes of Kleenex. So I started to write it within a couple of months of her passing. And I had this incredible urge to write. And I got busy back on the road with work. COVID was loosening up. I got to Tennessee, started building a house, and literally the book sat completely untouched for over a year. So I finished writing the book in October of 25. I started writing it in October of 21. So it was a 4-year process with a huge pause in the middle because I unconsciously was having a hard time. Even though I wanted to write it, I was having a hard time. I felt that it would disparage my mother's memory. And that's another interesting story in the book that I won't blow for people, but something happened. There was a release of energy there. And then I went away and I finished the book in a week.
If you were to talk to somebody who's an alcoholic and has kids, as an alcoholic kid, what would you say to that parent?
I think the first thing I would say is you have no idea of the wounds that you are creating and setting that child up for failure. So actually, now that I stop and think about it, I guess the first thing I would say is, quick question. Would you like your child to be as successful as he or she could possibly be? And of course, every parent's going to say what? Yes. Right? I don't care how bad the parent is. No parent wants anything bad for their kid. Right?
Yeah.
And so then I would say, do you have any idea the amount of scars that you are creating emotionally for that child that will forever become roadblocks to their reaching true success, not just in their work life, but
personal.
Most significantly in their personal life. I mean, look, I've never been married. Yeah. I'm 61. I probably never will be married. And I attribute a lot of that to the fact that my guards, as much work as I did, Sydney, that was definitely a fear of mine.
It's so hard. Your friendships are on a different level. Intimate relationships are completely different than any other relationship. And when you deal with a parent that's a bit abusive, whether that's emotionally, physically, whatever, like that shuts down a part of you.
Still in a mode where I'm very busy developing this new wellness center in Tennessee. Now that's an excuse. I promised myself I would get on, what's it called? Tinder. Promised myself I would get on a dating app, and so I do want to. Look, and this is now you're going to really see where certain guards are still up. I want a man in my life, not my house. There's not an extra closet in my house. And I say that, okay, so obviously at 61, I'm not having kids, right? We've got grand nieces and nephews at this point, and I have been the world's greatest aunt.
You want someone to add.
But I want someone to augment my life, to
Yeah.
add to it. I am a fulfilled person. This is part of the issue. I know it's going to sound warped. Not that you don't want some romance and some connection in your life. You do. And at the same time, I literally love what I do every day. It's not like I'm walking. You know how some people are single and they're like, I've got a friend, he's always looking for the next relationship.
Yeah.
And he's constantly saying to me, don't you want something? I said, well, yeah, but it happens. I know I have to be somewhat proactive, but I'm not lonely. I think that when you have true love in your life, love as in the whole universe, God love, right? When you are a loving person and you have loving relationships with your family. I mean, my brother and sister are my two best friends.
That's amazing.
How lucky am I for that, right? His alcoholism did not impact me at all. My brother and I were the closest. It was my sister because she was the middle child.
Okay.
She was the princess with my mother, and my brother and I were always in trouble. Riding motorcycles. We both got lots of beatings, I can assure you. But my sister moved back to Rhode Island right when she was having her first child, and she ended up coming and working with me for the next 20 some odd years. So we became best friends during that time. So it was really my sister having a better relationship with me and my sister having a better relationship with my brother.
Incredible.
And once that happened, we love to travel together now. We have so much fun together. And I believe that we have broken. Now, my brother's two kids, and I'm not saying anything I haven't said to them to their face and in the book. Both of them are holics. And both of them have had issues with alcohol before. I can't say that they're raging alcoholics, but they clearly have the holic gene. I'm hoping that, and I wrote that in the book, I hope that they decide to remove that from their life, but they have the gene. They lived with me for 5 years with my brother. I saw it front row and center.
And will you explain what you mean seeing the gene in kids?
It's amazing how it shows up in everything. First and foremost, it could be Pokemon cards, right? You can't just buy a pack. You want 10 packs, right? You take your niece out shopping and she likes this little top. Now she wants one in all 10 colors, right? It's the kids go out for Halloween and they come home and they have to try to eat all the candy. Where my sister's kids, although one of them has more of a holic gene than the other, more obsessive compulsive, meaning he gets into something and then he's uber focused on it, right? But they grew up in an environment where they could have their candy in their room, but they'd still only eat 2 pieces a day. I could never have done that as a kid. I would have eaten the whole damn thing until I was sick.
I never looked at it like that. That's such a fascinating.
It is amazing. You can see it so early, Sydney, when you have been a witness to it, but not in it. You can see it. And even for me, I still to this day, I have to struggle with certain things.
How do you manage gene in your work balance? What are some skills that you use to be like, okay, I need to take a break and I need to take a little bit of me time when you might be in that like workaholic phase?
I have gotten to a place in my life where even though I'm a workaholic during certain times, I literally have a switch. I can flip the switch and I can turn my phone off. Like I go to Aruba to write every year for a week. I keep the phone on the internet. So if someone needs to text me, a family member, but like I don't check my messages for a week. I can turn it completely off. So that is a blessing. It's probably the only reason that I didn't burn out in my life. But my dad was the same way. My dad was a workaholic. I never even saw my father like happy with alcohol because he was a bartender as a kid and realized that he was destined for that same outcome, fate, if he didn't. So I believe I do have alcoholism on both sides of my family. I watched my father be a workaholic, but then he would go away for a week or 10 days and just completely shut it down. So I think that was certainly a good mentor to watch and see that you can do that. The other thing is truly just, I meditate every day for 20 minutes. And I try to get above and look down at my life and be a witness to my life, almost like I'm in a movie theater.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Oh, yeah, okay, there's a little problem there. You got 4 pairs of those shoes and 2 of them are in the box. So it still sneaks in all the time. This is a life. It's life. In this lifetime, I will always have to fight against alcoholism. No matter how balanced I am.
It's never going to go away.
No.
I don't think there's anything wrong with being an alcoholic. It sucks. But like, I'm doing the internal work. I'm doing the work I need to do behind what that means. And so to me, it's like an accreditation of being able to help a specific group of people.
And it keeps you accountable to yourself, right?
I'm always checking in, always like checking on myself, seeing how I am. I'm way more in tune with my emotions and where I'm at because I know what would happen if I let that slip.
There's a principle in neurolinguistic programming called commitment and consistency. And you're doing this podcast is perhaps one of the strongest ways for you to remain sober because there's an internal switch, unless you're a psychopath. So there are some people that this doesn't have, but unless you're a psychopath, when you make a commitment publicly to do something, there's an internal pressure to want to be consistent with what you say. I'm in the health and wellness field. People say to me all the time, damn, you're in good shape for 61, or you don't look 61. And I think to myself, well, first of all, I say, yeah, I actually do. It's the rest of the world that looks like shit. And some people laugh and some people don't. But if I identify as someone in the health and wellness space, who was out of shape and I looked like I'd been a 6-pack a day smoker my whole life, would you find me credible? Probably not. Maybe once you got to know me, but let's face it, first impressions are so important.
They really are.
Yeah. So I think what you're doing, and that relates back to how do you keep yourself in tune and keep yourself on the straight and narrow. Whenever I'm getting ready to do something big, like write a new book, I make a public announcement. I say, I'm writing my new book, Selling Wellness, is going to be out by the end of April. And if I don't do that, I look like a jerk. And I know that the rest of the world is going to judge me for that. So I want to stick to my commitments.
And that's why I think there's something so beautiful about doing things. I say doing things loudly. That might not be the best way to say it, but that's my saying.
Publicly,
like,
loudly. Mm-hmm.
If we stay silent on these things, people die. I'm a big believer in that. The more we talk about it, the more normal it gets, and the more people have access to tools that can help them.
We have an expression in the health and wellness space that says, if you care, you share. Mm-hmm. And here's the thing. You never know. This podcast that might only be heard by 10 people initially, if it can change one life, you never know whose life you're going to change. That's why you always strive to try to make an impact.
That's how this whole podcast came to be, was because if it could help one person, if I had this when I was getting sober, it would have been a lot easier for me. There's so many people I met in rehab who were a child of alcoholic parents and didn't even know where to start or how to unpack it all. And then they had issues for alcoholism, which leads me into, what would you say to somebody who is scared that they're going to become what they grew up with?
I would suggest that you sit down and write your eulogy of what you want to be. In my book, I talked about how I was 23 at the time when I went to Date with Destiny with Tony Robbins. We had to write goals. And it was your 6-month goals, your 5-year goals, your 10-year goals. I went through, and this was a life-altering experience for me. It put me on the right path for personal development. he gave us this journal, this hardbound journal with our name embossed on it, to go through all of the exercises over the 3 days that we did. And I used it afterwards for a period of time. And then I went to a journaling, hardbound journal life, writing down things. When I was packing up my office and getting ready to move to Tennessee, I was clearing out a bookshelf that hadn't been touched in 20 years. And there was that journal. And I opened that journal up and I was reminiscing in my then 55-year-old self what my 23-year-old self was going through at the time. And I got to the goals page, Sydney. And I was just admiring, like, oh, look at how cute your goals were then. Oh, yep. Oh, I hit all my 6-month goals. Wow. I hit all my 5-year goals. And these were some, buy a house. These were some pretty significant things. And then I got to my 10-year goals. And I got to the 4th goal down. And I stopped dead in my tracks. And that goal was get your mother to stop drinking. Still gets me choked up to talk about. Every other goal in that 10 years was accomplished. The only goal that wasn't accomplished was the one I had no control over. First of all, every kid that graduates from high school in my life, I give them the book Think and Grow Rich. Because going back to you saying everybody needs therapy, I think there's 3 things that they should be teaching every kid starting in grammar school. Number 1, finances and understanding savings and compounding interest. Number 2, therapy to deal with emotions and to be a better communicator. And number 3, personal development. How to learn how to take control of your life and know that everything happens and you have a choice. You can either make it better or you can go down the path of victim and bitter. And so what I say to someone who right now is saying, wow, I don't want to be like that parent or whatever it is, it might not even be alcohol. It could just be a rotten person, right? I say, write your eulogy, because here's where the story about the goals comes in. You work unconsciously. Your brain isn't, this is why I'm a big fan of making vision boards every year. You've got to put it in your brain where you want to go. And if you have a big enough why, you'll figure out how to get there.
It's so interesting because when we talk about vision boards, there's something that happens in your brain when you're doing something and you have to draw it or sketch it or use images instead of words.
Your brain is an amazing thing.
It's
Ask
incredible.
and you shall receive, right? So we have to teach people how to ask for the right things. The brain can't take a negative. So we say this in NLP all the time. If I say, don't think of the color blue,
I see blue.
you have to see blue in order to then say, no, don't think of it. That's why we don't say to a kid, don't spill the milk, because they'll spill it. You say to them, keep that upright. And so with the brain, whatever you want to accomplish, you must picture it, state it, affirm it in the positive. And if you have a big enough why, you will always find a way. Look at the Michael Jordans, look at the Tom Bradys, right? These people didn't make their high school basketball team, were drafted 199th in the 6th round. They just were very clear about where they wanted to go, and then they put the work in.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with any type of behavioral change, which of course alcoholism or holism or anything is. You still got to put the damn work in. It's not going to happen for you. You've got to go through the process and look at people. Like I look at my uncle, my mother's brother, and they were completely separated and did not have any relationship. It was actually a toxic relationship, and he didn't do the work. He's a dry alcoholic. To this day, he's still alive. He's a dry alcoholic. So you got to put the work in.
When I was in addiction and people kept telling me to find my why, I never really understood what that means. So how would you explain what is finding your why and why is that important?
Yeah, to put it in real simple terms, a why is what gets you up early in the morning and keeps you up late at night. We've all had, even if it's a little microcosm, right? Okay, college or high school, you didn't take all the week's prep, but now you're going to get an F. So in that moment, you had a big enough why and you stayed up all night and you wrote the paper, or you got up early to finish it, right? So it's something that gets you up early and keeps you up late. In my opinion, your why is your purpose and your passion that cross paths. What is your passion? What do you love to do? And then the purpose, why do you want to do that? And when you find those two things, you will be driven at an unconscious level to do it. First of all, because you love it, right? I love talking about personal development. I just feel like more people need to know about Think and Grow Rich and setting intentions and daily habits and meditation and goal setting and vision boards and masterminding and all these things that I don't think anybody comes into this world and says, I think I just want to get by. No, just get by in life. I don't want anything nice. Just nobody says that.
Mm-mm.
Now, they might have bigger goals, but they're so afraid of reaching or not reaching them, failing, that they don't want to verbalize them. But then that's where the skill set comes in.
Yeah.
So I always I say to the kids in my life, don't worry. I say, my dad wants me to go be an attorney. I'm an attorney, but I don't practice. But they say, I'm going into medical because I think I can make a lot of money. Money doesn't make you happy. I can absolutely promise you that, and look around at all the celebrities, and it's clear money doesn't make you happy, right? So what is it that you want to do? What do you love to do? What do you love so much that it doesn't feel like work?
Yeah.
And then why do you want to do that? What good are you going to do in the world because of that? And guess what? You'll always have a good life. You'll make enough money. Okay, you might not be a millionaire. My niece is a jeweler. She's so good at it. She's so passionate about it. She's somewhat broke, but she's making enough. But she loves what she does every day. And you know what? That's more important than money at the end of the day.
I love the idea of your why being your purpose and your passion intersecting to one another. I think that's such a good way to explain it. I've never heard it explained that way.
And let's face it, alcoholism is just a numbing agent. That's all it is. It's a disassociation technique. People use drugs and alcohol because they don't like their life.
Oh, 100%. It was just a numbing thing of not wanting to be there anymore, which is why it still shocks me at the end of this podcast that you didn't drink at all. And yet went through all that in your childhood and didn't want to once escape from. That's incredible. That's really incredible.
Well, it was a gift.
You're an anomaly, I feel like. I think I only know one other person who's a child of an alcoholic, who is my horse trainer, who has never picked up alcohol.
Well,
ever.
But there's 2 in our family. So 2 out of 3 is extraordinary.
Those are you guys are beating the odds over there. What do you think people misunderstand about children of alcoholics?
If you're not an adult child of an alcoholic, you really do not appreciate the depth of damage that happened. Well, you don't drink, Casey, so you weren't that affected by it. Clearly your brother was, because he was an alcoholic. So it's the emotional scars of adult children of alcoholic that, in my opinion, are the hardest. And I think that people don't realize how much manipulation is happening underneath the alcoholism that kids are affected by.
Yeah.
No matter what age.
I almost feel like being the child of an alcoholic would almost be worse. I don't think you can really compare the two between an alcoholic and a child of an alcoholic. In a sense, you're getting all of the backlash by someone who's supposed to be your caregiver and your caretaker, and you have no one to go to and nowhere to run, and you're just there. That sounds horrible.
Yeah, and it's the dirty little secret that nobody talks about.
You guys don't get blissful ignorance.
No. And I'll give you a new saying you can incorporate in your stuff. We say denial. It's so hard to admit.
So we have one more question here for you today, and this one's kind of a big one. If your mom was sober and sitting here right now, what would you want her to understand, or what would you want to say to her?
I love you. She gave me the gift that shaped me to be the person I am today. She is a soul who had a human experience. She and I will go around again in another lifetime, in another incarnation. I love you.
I love how much you shifted your perspective. I think the title of the book is spot on. Honestly, bitter or better. And you really took everything that had happened to you and were like, this has to be my drive.
Yep, I say it's one daily choice for living your best life.
It's incredible. It's such a rare outlook, but it's nice, I think, for people on the podcast to hear someone who genuinely has a positive outlook on life. And that is actually like not a front or a mask or a faking it. Like, you've created this life for yourself off of your experiences. And it is so possible to turn all the bad things that have happened to you into something phenomenal and to help people in the process.
Yeah.
It's the easiest way to get out of yourself is to help others.
Yeah. I have a notepad at home and it says, she built the life she loved. And that's really the message to people. It's your choice. Shit happens. It's not what happens that matters. It's what you do with what happens to live the life you love and make a difference in the process, right?
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on to
it
Young and
was great.
Sober.
It
Do you have
was
anything
great.
else you want to say to the viewers or anyone who's out there listening?
If any of what I said today resonates with you, tell someone about the book. Go to my website, CaseyConrad.com. I've got other books, Make Yourself Healthy Again, my wellness studio in Tennessee. But try to make a difference.
Thank you guys so much for joining us on this week's episode of Young and Sober. As always, for the sober confident, the sober curious, and the sober-ish, please take care of yourself, drink some water, and I will see you in the next one. Love you guys. Bye.